This is probably a bad idea. Hey y'all, welcome back. I am kind of excited and kind of terrified for today's video because we're going to be talking about BJDs and recasts. Y'all might have seen the Doll Circles BJD video that she released a little bit ago. She got a doll from a company that I believe sells on Amazon, and there was some drama. I don't think that Elvira meant to offend anybody whatsoever. She doesn't seem like that kind of person. So I did just want to say that. But it did get me thinking about the BJD community and their opinions on knockoff dolls. So here I am, making a video about it. A quick and extremely important disclaimer. I don't want to get any hate. I'm not trying to start any arguments or any more drama. I just want to have an open discussion. A lot of people who are first getting into BJD, like Elvira, probably aren't aware of how controversial and how intense this topic is. So I'm just trying to make an informational video talking about both sides of the recast debate. I am coming from a place of complete neutrality. I have looked into the BJD community a little bit, but I have never purchased a doll, so I don't have any personal stake in this argument. And overall, I am not taking any sides at all on this issue. None of the things that I'm talking about are going to be representative of my own position or my own opinion, because I don't have one. I just want to say that because I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying to inject myself personally. I'm just trying to present both sides of the controversy in a fair and unbiased manner. So, to start off with, just a couple of definitions and explanations for you guys in case you aren't aware of what's going on here. The acronym BJD stands for ball jointed dolls. So they're dolls that are named because they have ball and socket joints, and they're extremely posable. Mostly, obviously this is a general statement, but for the most part, these dolls are made of resin, and a lot of the time they are produced in China, Japan, and South Korea. They're known also as ABJD, which is Asian BJDs, but for the most part, a lot of BJD dolls come from those countries, so it's kind of a generalization, like I said. The dolls are known, again, for their posability. They have a lot of joints, and they can do a lot of range of motion. They're also known for their detail and how customizable they are. A lot of BJD companies offer options to sell a doll with a pre-painted face or with a completely blank face so that you can paint it and make it completely unique and all your own. What's more is that BJDs are handmade by doll artists, and that's kind of where the problem begins. The second definition you're going to need to know is recast. So a recast is when a person buys an original genuine doll from a BJD company and then takes the doll and makes a mold of it. They will then use this mold to create replicas of the genuine doll in order to sell them for a profit, and those dolls are known as recasts. Because they are handmade, BJD can be incredibly expensive. They range from like $80 in the US on the cheaper end to hundreds of US dollars. You know, the more detail you get up in there when you start to buy different clothes and all that stuff that can go along with them. And then the recasts, because they can use one mold to make several dolls, are most of the time significantly cheaper than a genuine BJD. So, now that we have some background, let's dive into the controversy part of this. I feel like this is an important video to make, but I'm also like so nervous that I'm going to start stuff I don't want to start. Anywho, let's go for it. I'm going to start with the vastly more popular opinion, which is that recasts are immoral and that you shouldn't be buying them. The people who support this argument are known as anti-caster or pro-artist. The basis of their argument comes from the fact that, unlike in a situation of someone buying a fake designer handbag, BJDs are made by individual artists or small companies. I had a hard time putting an exact pin on how small these companies are. A lot of anti-casters tout like a lot of different numbers, but I wasn't able to find sources for them. So I did some digging on my own and looked up a few different BJD companies, and I was only able to find employee information on one, and that was Hujo. Hujo, you know, supposedly, from what I could find on the internet, has around 10 employees, so quite small. The highest number that I saw anti-recast supporters talking about was a company of 25 people. So generally speaking, BJDs are made by pretty small companies. So when you have someone making a counterfeit BJD, they're not taking money away from a mega corporation. Any sale of a recast means potentially a lost sale of a small company, and that could affect their profits to the point where it also affects the individual people. It's basically an extension of the idea that you should be supporting artists like people do on Etsy and paying them what they're worth for their time and all of the effort that they put into their art. Anti-recasters also point out that in a lot of places, it's illegal to make counterfeits. Depending on where you live, it may or may not be a crime to purchase one. It's less likely for it to be a crime to buy one than it is for it to be a crime to make one. But even if it's not a crime, it could be a crime for them to be making them and selling them. So by buying a recast, you could be supporting a potentially illegal enterprise. Another point in the anti-recast argument is that it hurts the secondary market, which is where people are selling their old BJD dolls to new collectors. It's important to have a good secondary market because it's likely that people who are selling their old BJD are going to reinvest in new BJD or at least new doll accessories or something like that. So even if you're buying a doll secondhand, you are still indirectly supporting some sort of doll artist. Whereas if you buy a recast, you're supporting someone who made a fake. And the availability of recasts hurts the secondary market because A, they're typically cheaper than secondary dolls, and also because people are so afraid of buying recasts that a lot of the time they won't even consider buying a secondhand doll just in case it is a fake. Finally, with a recast, you don't really have any way of knowing for sure what it's made of. It could be made of perfectly good quality materials, or it could be made with really cheap materials, or it could be made by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, so it's made poorly because they don't have the experience. So you might be getting a good deal on a recast, but there's no guarantee that you're actually getting a good doll in return for your smaller investment. So, those are the reasons not to buy a recast. It was a little harder for me to find any reasons to buy a recast, mostly because of a lack of information out there. I was originally going to ask the BJD subreddit for their opinions either way on the matter and use that for the information for my video because they have experience and knowledge that I don't. But when I went to do so, I was reading through the rules, and the BJD subreddit actually doesn't allow you to discuss in a positive way recasting. You're not allowed to be pro-recast on their subreddit. So that didn't work. I posted on the general doll subreddit, and I only got one comment, which was lovely. I was so happy to have at least that comment. But I do want to get into that one a little later. So, as far as the pro-recast side of things, I had to do my own digging, so this is what I found. First and foremost of the pro-recast arguments is the price. That's pretty obvious. Many doll lovers can't afford to just drop hundreds of US dollars on a doll because they have other things going on in life, and therefore the cheaper recasts are the alternative that they turn to. Anti-casters would argue that if you can't afford to buy the real doll from the original artist, then you shouldn't be purchasing anything at all, and you can either save up or just not get the doll. I've seen a couple of arguments against this. Pro-recasters will say, A, that this is a form of gatekeeping in that they're not being allowed into the community because of their financial constraints. Or the second argument that I found is that a lot of BJD dolls sell out on their releases, so the artist is making money anyway, so they're like, okay, I might as well buy a recast. That's the argument with that. Another reason people support buying recasts is for practice. Like I said earlier, a lot of BJDs come with a blank face, or the option for a blank face, so that you can customize your doll fully, literally from head to toe. And that's a daunting task. I don't know if you guys have had any experience repainting dolls. I did one, and it's hard. It's a very, very small canvas that you're working on, and if you're not experienced, it can be difficult to do. So pro-recasters argue that it's better to buy a cheap doll, so that way if you mess up, you didn't just mess up the face of a $500 doll. On the other hand, anti-recasters will say that you can do and redo and paint and repaint a doll's face over and over without damaging the sculpt itself, as long as you're doing it properly. But then again, on the flip side, it is as long as you're doing it properly. So if someone really messes up with acetone or something, there's always the potential for something going wrong. And then also some people might have a really hard time learning, or they might try to do a face up and realize that they absolutely hate this hobby. So a lot of people hold the opinion that it's just cheaper and more financially understandable to buy a recast, a cheaper doll, to practice and learn and kind of get involved on, instead of jumping in to the deep end. And then the third and final pro recast argument that I was able to find is in the case of a doll that is no longer being manufactured by the actual doll company, so it's been discontinued. At that point, pro recasters are saying it's not like they'd be getting my money regardless because they don't offer the doll, so what's the harm in buying a recast? Anti-recasters would say to go to the secondhand market, but if you go to the secondhand market, the doll's prices actually tend to jack up because it's discontinued. It's now harder to find and buy that doll, so pro recasters would prefer to buy a recast anyway. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the two sides of the equation. Again, I'm not on either side. I don't have an opinion. I'm not weighing in on this whatsoever. I don't have any BJD, so it's not even close to my place to weigh in anyway. Like I said, I wanted to present both sides of the argument to help people understand and be able to make an informed decision if they are looking to get into BJD. For people who are new to the hobby, they might not even think to research this kind of thing, because for most people, they're buying a doll that looks pretty. They aren't aware of the huge weight and controversy that comes behind their potential decisions. And I think people can get caught up in that. It can be really, really hard for a new person to the BJD community to tell the difference between a real and a fake doll. Really, the biggest thing is the price, but if you're new, how would you necessarily know that a cheap doll isn't just on sale somehow, you know? There are websites that give you tips and hints as far as how to tell if a doll that you're looking at online is a recast or is a genuine doll, but sometimes they're not super helpful. A lot of the tips are things that you won't be able to know unless you can see the doll in person, or if you are already extremely familiar with how the doll looks if it's a genuine article. And again, doesn't help a new person. I saw one post that was advising people to be wary of Chinese sellers, but considering that a lot of BJDs are produced in China, bad advice. Like, how are you supposed to know if it's genuine or not if you're new? Obviously, if you are in this community, you can do the research if you've, gotten in deep like that. But for new people, it can be really, really hard. The only tip that I saw that was mildly useful was that if you see a doll on, say, eBay, if it's listed as unbranded, there's a pretty good chance that that's a recast and not a resale of a genuine doll. But on the flip side, it's not that hard for someone who's selling a counterfeit to lie and just list the actual brand name. So again, it's a little bit difficult. This is where the one comment that I did get on my doll subreddit post comes in. I did ask this user if I could go ahead and quote them for this video, and they said yes. So this is what user My Misfits had to say. Recasts are to the doll community like pirating is to the film world. It's theft, pure and simple. The problem is, I don't think that many buyers, especially first-time buyers, know what the problem with recast dolls is. Many buyers see a pretty doll at a reasonable price and see the same doll at a much higher price, and, seeing a deal, they buy the cheaper doll. In an economy like this, it is really hard to spend $500 on a doll when you still need to pay rent and other bills. In an uninformed marketplace, with the process of production reducing the ability of legitimate sellers to profit, it's not a surprise that recasting art dolls or even play dolls is a very lucrative business. I really don't think that it is fair to attack buyers who are just seeing a doll they like and buying it. Information is hard to find if you're not big into the community that specific doll creates. People buy from fast fashion companies and are not being shamed for buying it. Someone created that design and isn't profiting on the remakes and fakes. It's not right, but is it the buyer or the seller at fault? I think this is a great point where if you, like this user, are against recasting, it's important to consider if the person who purchased one knew what they were doing ahead of time, and if they didn't, are you still at liberty to blame them? Are they still at fault? The lack of information is, at least in my opinion, I don't know her, so I can't say for sure. But I think it's what put Elvira in such a tough spot. She didn't realize that she was walking into something so controversial. And she didn't even buy an actual BJD. The doll that she bought doesn't have ball and socket joints. So it's only BJD adjacent. And she still got caught up in this mess. That brings me to one more thing that I want to address, and actually the only thing that I am going to personally weigh in on. And that's that the BJD community can be intense, and frankly, it scares me a little bit. Again, I know that that's a general thing, but from what I've seen, it's made up of very opinionated people, which is totally fine, but it can be intimidating for people who are trying to get into the community. That's why I'm so nervous to make this video, even though I'm being impartial and just doing this for educational purposes. Anti-recaster supporters may mean well, but a lot of the time they come off as abrasive to people who are asking questions or who might have bought a recast. Sometimes they outright bully people for purchasing one. Again, not everyone on that side is going to be rude, but I've seen some rough stuff. The fact that I wasn't even allowed to ask for pro-recast arguments on the BJD subreddit is incredibly telling to me. I think that banning a topic of conversation is not a good way to get people on your side. And in the same way, I think that yelling at someone who has purchased a recast is not going to make them agree with you. It's just going to make them feel hurt and afraid and not welcome in the community. Regardless of how you feel on either side, I think that people have the right to all the information and all the opinions, not just a select portion of it. For that reason, I am dropping several links that I used in my research on this topic in my description. I am high-key scared that I'm gonna get some hate for that, but I truly believe that it's unfair to ask people to make a decision on buying a real or a fake doll without presenting both sides of the argument. I think that everyone deserves unbiased information and, most importantly, kind discussion. I really hope that's what my comment section's gonna be. Obviously, this is a very controversial topic, so I am expecting disagreement, but I hope that everyone can be calm and be adults about this and just be civil and let people speak their piece without attacking them in either direction. So, that is what I've got for you guys today. It's a little bit different from what I usually do, but I don't know, when I saw Elvira having a rough time with her video, I kind of felt for her, and I just wanted to make this video so that maybe some people will see it and not fall into that same trap of buying something without realizing what they're doing. So I hope that it was informative. I hope that you enjoyed it or got something out of it. Mostly I hope that this all goes well and I didn't stir the pot when I'm trying to do literally the opposite. But regardless, I hope that you guys do have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next more calm video. Bye guys.